And I'm not saying that refugees are rapists. What's up, guys? Fooch from Fooch TV here. And today we're going to be talking about asylum seekers in Korea. Now, taking a look at this first article here from the Korean Herald, it says total asylum applications tops 70,000 in Korea. And no, we're not talking about just this year. We're talking about since data on this issue started being collected in 1994. Let's take a look at this graph right here. It says total asylum applications top 70,000 in Korea. And this is the number of asylum applications. This is coming from the Korea Immigration Service. Now, from 1994 to 2012, so a span of 8 years, we only saw about 5,000 applications. And since then, each year seems to be growing. In 2013, it was about 1,500. That jumped to around 3,000 in 2014, 5,000 in 2015, 7,500 in 2016, almost 10,000 in 2017. 2018 was 16,000. Dropped down a little bit in 2019 to 15,000. And from January to August of this year, it's about 6,000. And that makes sense because of the coronavirus. Now, these numbers also make sense, even though Korea was, quite a wealthy nation in 1994, much wealthier than, Korea was in the 70s, 80s. And, before that, as the country became richer and richer, more and more people wanted to, seek asylum in Korea. So those numbers really make sense, more and more people wanting to come in. And taking a look at this article from Al Jazeera of South Korea accepts just 164 of nearly 6,000 asylum seekers. That 6,000 they're referencing is the data in 2020 from January to August of 5,800. They're rounding that up to about 6,000. Out of that 6,000, only 164 were accepted, which is very small. And I personally think that that's a great thing. This article kind of, brings out the point that only about 4% of the 4,000 applicants who completed the screening process were accepted or granted residency, a rate less than the 6% of 2019 and 16% of 2018. So it seems that less and less are being accepted. And part of this probably has to do with an incident that happened in 2018. Essentially, a boat full of Yemen refugees, they were drifting to Asia, and they ended up on Jeju Island, just south of Busan, or just below the tip of South Korea. Essentially, they landed there and they didn't know what to do with them, and most of them were granted asylum. Now, I've heard from people that those Yemens happen to be quite friendly, so maybe, Korea got really lucky with that. A lot of, as you can see from this picture here, a lot of people were angry. Fake refugees go home right now. People are upset. Some of these signs say, 국민이 먼저다, which is pretty much, citizens first, or South Korean citizens should be first. And I kind of agree with that. You could see what's happening in Europe right now. Europe allowed all these refugees to come in, and the amount of crime and the amount of rape and terrible things happening. I've heard stories about some refugee pushed a mother and her child in front of a train, killing them both. Now, I'm sure these cases are, very far and few between, and the majority of refugees might actually be good people. However, I do think that shouldn't be a risk that a country has to take, and a country has the right to determine who they want to let in and who they don't. And I don't think that a country is required to accept any asylum seekers at all. So this is pure altruism from the country, from Korea. Even if they want to accept one, that's one more than they actually have to accept. Korea is predominantly Korea. There are rules that, work. Even Westerners, when they come here, they break rules. There's certain things in Korea that just work the way they work because everyone knows the system. Everyone is attuned to the system. At a cafe, I can walk away from the table with my phone and laptop on it and go away. I could go away for 5 minutes, just go to the bathroom, or I could go out for a full hour to have lunch. And when I come back to that cafe, my laptop and phone will still be there. And that doesn't happen anywhere else in the world except for Korea and Japan. In the US, if you leave a laptop on the table just for 30 seconds and walk away, that it's going to be gone. And that doesn't even happen, or that doesn't mean that it only happens at cafes. I've heard stories about US universities, students leaving their phones and laptops on the table, and when they come back, they're gone. And I've heard Koreans that study in the US, I went to SMC, Santa Monica College, and Koreans studying there, they would leave their computer at the table, go to the bathroom, come back, and be gone. And they just go, we're at a university. Why would anyone, steal somebody else's laptop at a university? And I know we're talking about Americans here and not refugees. My point is we're bringing a whole bunch of foreigners who may not have the same value system. Maybe in their home country, rape isn't a serious issue, or sexually harassing women, or crimes aren't strictly punished. And I'm not saying that refugees are rapists and they're thieves and criminals and murderers. I'm not saying that. However, a small percentage of them have a chance of committing those types of crimes, and a country should want to protect itself, and the country should want to protect its citizens. So I completely agree with Korean citizens being very wary of letting refugees in and letting the asylum seekers come in. I think if they want to enter the country, they need to have good reason. It needs to be proven that they're actually in danger in their home country. And I think a very, very, very thorough background check should be done to ensure that everyone coming in, they understand the rules, they understand the laws, and they understand the value of Korean society. And I think that they should be making an effort, their best effort, to assimilate to the country. And if Korea decides that they don't want to let any more asylum seekers in, or if they agree they only want to allow, in this case, under 200 out of 6,000 applicants in, I don't think they should be criticized. And I think we should take a look at European countries as a good example of why we shouldn't just open the gates and let anyone in. We don't want any of those crimes happening. We don't want terrorism happening. It wasn't, right now we're seeing in France a whole bunch of terrorist attacks are happening. And I'm not necessarily saying those are being done by refugees. However, they are done by people who have very different values than France has. So you have people living in France that have different values of France, and they're committing crimes because their values, they don't have the same values, and they think that the French values are terrible. And we kind of saw that last week. We saw two people posting hateful messages on the French embassy, or I think they were threats. There were two threats were posted at the French embassy in Korea. The people who posted those threats were arrested. Honestly, I didn't even want to cover the issue because I don't even want to open that can of worms because I don't want to end up beheaded. But the point is, I'll say it again, Korea has a right to decide who comes into their country, and that goes for visitors, that goes for people coming here legally, people who are in a good position where they can come and apply for a student visa, work visa, whatever, people that get married, and also asylum seekers. You must follow the rules once you're here, and if Korea decides that you're not following those rules, or they don't want to take a chance that you may not follow those rules and commit a crime, I think that's perfectly fine. And I think some Western countries should take a lesson from Korea's approach. Now, I want to hear what you guys think. If you think that I'm being too harsh and the government's being too harsh and these protesters are being too harsh and that Korea should allow more refugees and more asylum seekers to come in, I want to hear what you have to think. Or if you think you agree with me and you think Korea is doing a great job, I also want to hear from you guys too. Remember, if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You know the deal. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys soon.